My family are immigrants. They are actually refugees from Vietnam. So it was post-Vietnam War. We had to leave the country. So we were refugees. With only the clothes on our backs, we escaped the country. And we went on a ship for 30 days to Hong Kong. And then we were put into refugee camps for 2 years.
Welcome to the Deals Estate Wholesaling Podcast, where we discuss finding, financing, and facilitating off-market real estate deals. I'm your host, Deji Odunton, and I'm joined on the show today by Trang to discuss and share her experience acquiring 5 off-market properties, off-market BRRRRs in Eastern Ontario last year during an economic downturn. Trang is an up-and-coming real estate investor and businesswoman who specializes in the BRRRR strategy. She also does a lot of Airbnbs in Eastern Ontario. In this episode, Trang and I discuss her secrets to finding deeply discounted off-market deals for full BRRRRs. We also discuss how she creatively financed a 6-unit building for only 5% down. And finally, we discuss how she spends zero in marketing dollars to acquire buildings at 40 to 60 cents on the dollar. Guys, if you are looking to buy off-market deals in 2024, you do not want to miss this episode. So please sit back and listen to the very end. Now, before we dive in, we want to say a big thank you to everyone who is listening. If you are a fan of this podcast, please subscribe and hit the notification button. We would also appreciate a 5-star review. Now, without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Hi, Trang. Welcome to the Deals Estate Wholesaling Podcast.
Hi, Deji. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm sure I'm more excited than you because I chased you for a while. We jumped on the call before this call, and it seemed like we had a podcast before a podcast because our initial conversation was close to 1 hour. And I asked myself, why didn't I record that call? So I'm hoping that this call would be as interesting as that one. So thank you, for coming on the show.
Thank you for finding me because, I'm new to the investing world and I love what you're doing because you're really focusing on a niche sort of topic, which is so hot because as a real estate investor, the most important aspect of any transaction is the deal.
Yep.
If you don't have the good deal, then you really don't have anything to start with. So that's the base of your project and your journey and to determine how successful your project is. So I think it's a very nice niche and I'm glad that you focus on that area.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. And you hit a nail on the head. When I started my journey, I usually reference this book called Money People Deal by Stefano.
Yes.
And in that book, he mentioned that there's 3 parts to a deal. You either be the person that has the money that funds the deal, or you are the person who brings the deal, or you're the person who facilitates the deal. So it could be a contractor, a service provider. But I always found it very interesting that without the deal, there's nothing to close on. So that's why I wanted to start off on the deal side of things as well, just to learn the art of finding deals. And yes, I couldn't agree with you more.
So I did ask this question. It's very interesting. I'm very close to my, I would say followers or the people that I engage with that I've networked with on my Instagram. So I've asked this question many times, as a sort of like a question to see like, what is the most difficult, challenging aspect of your real estate journey, whether you need to start or you're in it, especially during the economic downturn, like what is the biggest challenge as a real estate investor? And I would say the majority would say deal finding. Like deal finding, yeah, no, it's crazy because I thought it would be like money or people or whatnot. But the majority of my network, they're saying the deal is the most difficult. Because, when you're looking out in the deal, it's just like where do you look? There's so many different opportunities, different areas, different cities, different countries. Like you kind of get into the mode where you become decision paralysis, where you're looking at
Yep.
many numbers and you feel overwhelmed and you can't tell the difference between a good deal and a not good deal. So I think it's a huge opportunity for any investor, whether new or experienced, to understand what a juicy deal is. So the term I use is like juicy. If it's juicy, there's so much juice in the deal. There's so much margin that, even if you make a mistake, even
Yep.
if the interest rates are high, or even if the loan to value, the valuation is not where you want it to be, if the deal is juicy enough, then honestly, it creates such a big buffer for you. So if you're a new investor, it will cushion you for the unforeseeable, unpredictable things that create, a successful deal. So I think
Yep.
I love the deal because, equity should be bought on the way in, right?
100%.
On the
100%.
buy. So if you don't have cushion or equity in the buy, you're already off to a very rough start, in my opinion.
Yeah. And honestly, I think you've actually captured it well, because if I try to take what you've echoed right now and I try to bring that back to the money people deal framework, what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is if you have money, and for example, as you rightly mentioned, maybe the property or the deal was meant to be 3 months and maybe it's now 6 months, so you have additional holding costs, or you make some mistakes on, like the type of financing you get, so you're paying significantly higher rates or significantly higher interest payments every month. On the deal, on the people side, you get the wrong contractors, you have to fire a contractor mid-reno. What you're saying is, even if you make those mistakes on the financing side and on the people side, as long as the deal is juicy enough, it would always provide you with a buffer for you to still win.
Absolutely. I think the people, like you mentioned, if a contractor messes up, you can always find there's a dime a dozen. You just got to
Yep.
figure out the right person. You may add on a little bit of timeline and cost, but again, like if you don't have that cushion from the buy, you're going to have a lot more challenge trying to solve the problems further down the road. So I think that you have to look at a project in a more holistic way. When you're going in, you have to assess the project on an A to Z, right? Because my
Yep.
background is in business, so I'm a product manager. So I have to assess the product or the project because on from the acquisition stage to the refinance stage and the exit part. So
Yep.
if I don't have all my ducks in a row, then I don't feel comfortable going in a deal, right? So you can't
Yep.
really make decisions based on silo. Let's just say, oh my God, the deal is so juicy, but you forgot all the other things that come with the deal where you have to, have the team in place, and then you
Yep.
have to refinance, and you have to have a good mortgage broker that understands the structuring.
Got it.
So I think the deal, it starts with the deal for sure. It's a big chunk of it, but I think everything is just as important. But I do put a lot of emphasis on the deal because the deal kind of starts the ball rolling and it kind of gives you cushion for safety for you to go through the entire process.
Perfect. And that's what
Yeah.
we're going to be discussing here today, because this is the home of
Okay.
off-market deals.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. So I know you started mentioning a bit about yourself, but I also wanted to give you time to just expatiate on that. Could you tell us a brief overview about your background, how you got into real estate, and, how your journey has been?
Yeah, so my background is in business. I've worked in many capacities of the consumer packaged goods industry as a product manager. So I managed a project from A to Z for major retailers such as Costco and Walmart.
Okay.
So that's why I love looking at real estate business. I adapt the same philosophy as a regular business because, just because you're making a decision right here is beneficial for your business doesn't mean that it's not going to add on double the costs at the other aspect of the business. So I think having a more holistic point of view um, enables me to thrive in real estate just because I have that business background. So the
Okay.
skill sets that I've already learned from my job is actually transferable. So some people are like, in the beginning, I felt like, oh, I'm a new investor. I don't know what I'm doing. But I think that people have to give themselves a little more credit. You just didn't wake up and become a real estate investor and you didn't know anything.
Yep.
The logic, the common sense, the analytical, the business side is all those skill sets are transferable. So I think a lot of people need to give themselves more credit, even if it's just anything that life skills are transferable to business. So
Okay.
that's my background. So the other question you asked is my why. My why is that my family are immigrants. They are actually refugees from Vietnam. So it was post Vietnam War. We
Okay.
had to leave the country. So we were refugees. With only the clothes on our backs, we escaped the country. And we went on a ship for 30 days to Hong Kong. And then we were put into refugee camps for 2 years. So your eyes are like, what? So having gone through that, being completely refugees, my parents were in survival mode. So they had to do everything that they could possibly do to put food on the table.
Yeah.
So having to go through that, as a young child, not knowing, if you're going to survive or where your food's going to come from or if you can pay the bills, being such a survival mode for so long,
Yep.
my parents worked 3 jobs just to put in the food on the table. And they didn't know any better. So for me, financial literacy wasn't something I grew up to. I had to figure it out on my own. So I think coming from such a survival background enables me to have this sort of hunger, that sort of drive is like, I see what my parents have gone through, and I think that's not what I want for my future. So it's almost like it creates like that super
Drive.
drive to be like, how do I create a difference? Because my parents have sacrificed so much for me to have this opportunity. And then it's also for me to connect my past, my present, which is me trying to thrive in real estate because of my family's survival and sacrifice. And I'm trying to connect the future, which is, creating that generational wealth for my daughter. So that's kind of like my why and where I came from.
Well, that's very powerful. Like, I'm an immigrant as well, but like, I obviously didn't go through that, but there's some parts of the journey that I can relate to, and some parts that I obviously can relate to. So, thanks for sharing that. Um, when would you say things changed for you in the sense that you mentioned that you grew up in survival mode, but you obviously got to a point where you started to come in contact with financial literacy and you decided, okay, things were going to change. Do you remember when that was?
Yes, it was actually another survival mode. So I had gone through a separation and I bought my partner out. So I was like, this is like I have to do this. I have to do this for my daughter because it's like I can't rely on anyone else other than myself. So it was kind of like it kind of came out of survival mode where I have to do this, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so yeah, so it came from a desire to obviously I knew that there's more to life than just living the rat race. I've been in the corporate world, I've been climbing the corporate ladder, and where has that gotten me? Like, not very far, because I feel like working so hard, as my parents did. Like, I'm
yeah,
trying to change the trajectory for my daughter's future, but I find myself just burnt out. Going to school, paying off debt. It's like a cycle of like constant working to live and living to work, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I wanted to find out the cheat code to life. I'm like, what is the cheat code? Like, how are people doing this? With inflation, with cost of living, I was like, this is impossible. Like, am I going to work 90% of my life and try to enjoy 10? No, that's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
So I thought about like creative options. Like maybe I can live in a tiny house and sell my house, but I'm like, or maybe I can go to Asia and do a geographical arbitrage. But I'm like, if I do that, what if it doesn't work out? I come back with nothing. Then I'm still in that rat race. So I was like, hey, what can I do that builds wealth? And the only thing that came to mind was obviously, real estate, because it's like the most safe, tangible investment that it's guaranteed for success in the long run.
If
So
you
I'm
know
like,
what you're doing.
Yeah, it becomes like, how do I do this? I don't know what I'm doing, but I need to do this. So I started, obviously, like all of us, reading books. One of the books I read is People, Money, Deal, because yeah,
Okay.
here you go. The other one I read was obviously Rich Dad Poor Dad was my first
Yep.
book. I didn't even get through half of the book, and I was like, that's it, I'm doing this. Like literally the first chapter, I was like, oh my God, like it just like mind blown. I'm like, my
Light
mental
bulb.
completely changed. So yeah, so that's when my hunger began. I'm like, okay, so my parents gave me this opportunity and they told me Canada is a land of opportunity, right? The worst that can happen is the tax dollars, like you can be on welfare. That's the worst case scenario. He's
Yeah.
like, you can do anything. If that's the bottom, then the world is, full of endless possibilities. So I was like, I took that mentality. The worst is I'm not gonna be in the streets. So I'm like,
Yeah.
let's go all in. So that's kind of like what my mindset, how it worked out.
Perfect. And like I have to say, like, I'm sorry that a lot of the things that you are mentioning that have obviously driven you to this point, aren't things that are, positive, but it seems like you've taken them and the way you have reacted to them is to take those things and then use it to drive yourself forward, which is commendable. Like a lot of people, go through stuff and those things sink them, but it
Mhm.
seems like in your own case, those two defining moments have actually driven you to where you are right now.
Yeah, I think it kind of did because I think it did. The certain like at the time you're thinking this is the worst thing ever, but then in hindsight it kind of drove you, it pushed you, to choose the path that is right for you. So
Yeah.
in hindsight, it worked out.
Okay. So coincidentally, a lot of this action that you're speaking about is seems to be happening quite recently. And I know for a fact, everyone knows for a fact that the past 2 years, has been quite, hazy. you know, people call the past 2 years an economic downturn. People say it's a correction. But I would like to understand, how you made this decision in the midst of, the market being what it is, when other investors, other senior investors, more expensive investors were sitting on the fence, waiting for the market to level out. You decided to jump in head first. So just walk us through your thought process regarding getting into the market at a time like this.
Yeah. So, like I said before that, I started about a year and a half ago now,
Okay.
and I remember, I remember having to go to my first deal, right? When the market was pivoting and people were so scared. And I thought about that quote, like everyone was sharing, Warren Buffett, when people are fearful, you be greedy. When people are greedy, you be fearful. So I'm like, what does that even mean? All right. So I remember having my first, by coincidence, just knowing that I wanted to buy my first property. I didn't know what I was
Okay.
doing, right? And then I think it's just, not knowing what you're doing the best that you can with the information you're given and taking action.
Yep.
Literally, you don't have to know everything. Like I only knew like 50%, but I'm like, you know what? I know this will work. Let's just trust my intuition, my gut. Let's just keep following the process, even though I feel like I'm walking in a cloud. Like I can't see, but I'm just plowing forward. I'm like one inch at a time, right?
And
As
did
soon
you have any coaching?
no coaching at all. My
Interesting.
first property, I just knew that, okay, I'm just going to do this. This is what people do, right? Obviously. And so it was like the peak of the market, right? And
Yep.
I had refinanced. So I had a lot of equity in my primary residence, right?
Okay.
And then I leveraged that to buy my first rental, which I didn't know what I was doing. So I think the key was like the results in 6 months. You know, it the value went up by 100K in 6 months without doing anything.
Was that because of the market or was it forced appreciation?
I think it was because the fear in the market, the whole market halted, stopped. Like no one
Okay.
was buying. Interest rates were rising. So I had refinanced at the peak
Okay.
and then I pulled out equity and then the market was just like dropping prices. Boom, 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 boom.
Okay.
Right. So I'm like, okay, well, perfect. Like I'll just wait. when nobody's buying, no bidding wars, I'll just buy. And then 6 months later, it appraised for $100,000 more. And I was like, oh my God, this is the gospel. Wow, it worked. So from then on, I was hungry. I was like, okay, guys, like, I need to learn how to do this. Like, how are people having hundreds of units? Like, how is that even possible? So I was so hungry. I was like, that's it, I'm doing this, right? So I talked to my mortgage broker. I'm like, so what do I do now? And they're like, yeah, you can keep buying. I was like, what do you mean I could keep buying? I thought he's like, nope, just keep buying. I'm like, okay, let me go shopping. So that's when I was super hungry and I wanted to find not a coach. I wanted to do almost like an internship. So I was
Okay.
like, how do I learn firsthand? Like I wanted first row seats to learning. Because I think for me, I can't just sit there and go through theory and like read theory and try to memorize and apply it. I have no patience for that. I'm like, I'm taking action now. I need to do it now. I'm hot. I'm hungry. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So that's quite interesting because, I haven't really heard of people in the real estate space using that word, right? Like rather than paying for coaching, it's like well, internship is more like mentorship, like as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe let me hear like how you structured the internship.
Yeah. So I interviewed a bunch of investors, right?
Okay.
So one investor I talked to, he was a forensic accountant. He did accounting for like the mayor of Toronto. Like he was like big time. So he was also a real estate investor. He did development, he did student rental. He was like in the span of 4 hours, he told me the whole real estate cycle. I've done this. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's crazy. He's owned 100 companies, property management, student rentals, accounting. And I'm like, this guy sounds like a fraud. Like, how is
Yeah.
it possible? I literally thought he was like up to lunch just because I was not educated.
Yep.
I thought he was just like cuckoo, right? So I was like, nope, not you. I'm not gonna learn from you because you're just like your ideas are so abstract. I can't even comprehend. They don't even logically make sense to me. And then actually, I interview a
But that
host
could also be because he was maybe a little bit too advanced. And I've
to
heard this before, where if you're looking for coaching or mentorship, yeah, it's all well and good to go to someone that's in level 10 if you're at level 1. But a lot of things they say and a lot of things they do and their context might not be very applicable to you, might not be very actionable to you at level 1. So it might be worthwhile for you to look for someone at level 2 or level 3 who
yeah.
can then take you to level 2. And then you look for someone at 4 and 5 that can take you to level 3. And then you keep building up till you get to someone in level 10.
That makes total sense. I think that's what I was experiencing. I was getting very overwhelmed by someone so experienced. Um, and then I had also interviewed a wholesaler, which is interesting. Like, and I think it was just a vibe, right? A vibe. Like I
Yep.
think for me is like that personal connection. I follow
Yep.
my intuition a lot. I'm a very intuitive person. And then I finally interviewed this one investor. He's like, I got 3 deals under contract. Who wants in? And I was like, me? Like, so I had talked to him and he was very forthcoming. He's like, you want to learn? Done. I can teach you everything, right? I'm like, okay, cool. So like, what does a JV partner involve, right? He was the active partner. He's looking for money partners, and I didn't know
Okay.
what a JV partnership was. And so I was like, okay, well, you know what? Sounds cool. Like I went to the site, I saw him in work, and I think what really resonated with me is how he was able to solve problems. He
Okay.
told me, he shared with me actions, not just like, hey, this is what I have, this is what I do. Like to me, that's not important. To me, is like, how do I determine your character as a person
Yep.
and how you're able to solve problems? So he told me yeah.
I was going to ask the same thing. Like, how did you get to the point where you trusted him? Um, did did you meet him at an event of like-minded people, or how did you get in touch with him?
So I started with being very hungry. So I was ready to go. I'm like, okay, I'm way too long overdue. Secondly, I think it was more of an intuition. I know it's just weird, but obviously he had a very track record of like a level 1 or level 2. So he's like a couple
Okay.
steps ahead of me. So I
Okay.
wanted to see, like, I want to be there within a short time, because I can kind of see like how he mapped out his journey. And I was
Okay.
like, I want to run with him because I'm ready to run with him, right? And he was the only one that was forthcoming. He was a little bit more vulnerable with his problems. Like he would tell me, this is the problem. This is how I went about solving it. And the result was this. And I was like, oh my God. So it showed me his character. And I think the fact that he was vulnerable, because I like people who are a little bit more vulnerable. Like it's like a trustworthiness, right?
Got it. Yeah.
The other ones were kind of cold. They didn't want any information. I felt like they were trying to like say, okay, if you want information, you got to pay. You know what I mean? So where he's like, nope, I genuinely want to teach you because I see that you're hungry. I want to teach. I was like, I'm very hungry. I need to learn. Right? So I'm like,
it would have been so interesting to, either see a picture or a video of you back then. I feel like the hunger would show through the picture or through the video, because you've said it so many times. I was hungry. I'm like, I would love to see how you.
Yeah, no, it's true. So yeah, so I interviewed him. I did my due diligence. I asked some of his partners. I went to his job site because I kind of took a couple steps further to do the due diligence. I had a lawyer review the joint venture contract.
Got it.
And then I just threw caution at the wind. I'm like, you know what? Enough of decision paralysis, researching. I'm done. I need to take action now. So I kind of like threw $200,000 at him. I was like, here you go.
Okay, so that's a little bit more than caution to the wind.
So what happened was he had a BRRRR property.
Okay.
So I had 3 to choose from. So I picked the most easy one. It was like a quick reno. It was equity on the buy, quick reno. So I'm like, perfect, low risk, right? But also it was, we couldn't get financing because that time, like the banks were all pulling back.
Yeah.
And it was in a tertiary market. So, the loan to value wasn't where we need it to be. So,
okay.
So I'm like, you know what? I have some HELOC left over. So why don't I just pay for cash? Because that way we can save on lenders' fees and broker fees. So we save at least like a couple $1,000. And then we don't have to pay to break the mortgage again. So I'm like, perfect, because this is,
So was the HELOC in addition to the 200K?
No. The HELOC was part of the 200K.
Okay. Because I was going to say, so at this point, your house was leveraged and then you were all in at this point. So it's like nothing should go wrong. Because if anything goes wrong, then it's a problem.
Yeah, I think I was, I don't know if I was all entirely leveraged, because I remember I refi at the peak. So I had more equity to play with.
Got it.
So I think, so because the banks were just like, no. And I was like, you know what? Let me show you. It's so bad. So I was like, all right, cool. So because I knew that the faster we do the refi, Nance, the faster we burn out. Because usually the term is like a year, right? You got to wait a year. But I'm like, this is so quick. It's literally like, a $10,000 renovations, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? Let me just pay with cash, like with the purchase price to end the renovations and the carrying costs. So we finished renovations in a month and a half. And then we refied out within 3 months. I got all my money back and more.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, what just happened? I got a free house? Like, how? So that's when my mind just like,
okay, now it's time to go again.
Like, what did I just do? So that's when I was like, oh, this is what it's all about. And then once my money is out, I was like, I'm ready to buy it again.
Okay, so now taking a step back, so this property that you walked us through, that was your first property. It was also off market, and you had shared with me that this was the same style for all the other ones. So, can you walk us through how you found that partner that you decided to go all into? Like, how did you find him, and how have you leveraged that relationship to find your other off-market deals? Because I believe this is a unique way of finding deals. Like, a lot of people spend money to find deals, but it seems like you found this deal by finding this person. So just wanted to understand how you found him and how you've leveraged that relationship to find other off-market deals.
So after we did our first deal, this is my second deal, but this is the first BRRRR. After we did the deal together, I saw an opportunity, because me, from a product manager point of view, business, I was like, hey, well, I assessed the entire transaction. I said, okay, you did amazing here. You're a little bit needs improvement here, and definitely needs improvement here. So I said, I don't think I don't think you can do it all, because the whole process from A to Z requires a lot of um, a lot of time and skill set and like efficiency. You're so good at deal finding, you're so good at property management, and you're a contractor, so I can help you. Like, it's awesome that you have all these deals, but who's gonna buy them, or who's gonna
Yeah.
take them? So I can help you with that part. And so let's form a partnership, right? I have a business background. I can do the numbers. I can do the bird's eye view strategy of like, I can manage the business while you are busy do operations, right?
Yeah.
So he agreed. He's like, oh my God, that's perfect. I was looking for someone like you. I was like, perfect. It's like, let's just form a partnership. So from there
Okay.
on, I knew he was good at deal finding because from my stories.
Yeah.
So coming from a business background for me is like the most important aspect of anything, because real estate is the business of people.
Yep.
So I think for me the most important aspect is the art of influence.
Yep.
So what that means is like, do you have the personality to get us good deals, to negotiate? Like, can you manage these relationships in a way that we could come out on top, right? So I
Yep.
saw that in him. I saw the potential of him cultivating these relationships in this market because he's so good at it. And I was like, this is a key strength and indicator of how successful we're going to be, is like having this skill set, right?
Okay.
Amongst
So
others.
so so if I can bring this back to the money people deal framework. So it seems like you formed a partnership because out of the three pillars that we mentioned, he's quite focused on the deal side of things. He's very good at finding deals, very good at building relationships. I believe he lives close to the market that you operate in, or he has strong relationships in that market. And
Yes,
then you, coming from the business side, you are able to handle the money side of that three pillar framework.
that's exactly it. We were
Perfect.
missing the money side because he didn't have time, or he was just spread too thin. And I said, let's allocate. You hit the nail in the coffin. Let's allocate. You are the back end, I'm doing the front end, and we come together, right?
Yep.
So in the beginning, you remember how we mentioned, okay, I have 3 properties under contract, who wants it? And I'm like, that's
Yeah.
not the way we do in business, right? So I'm like, I
Yep.
look for major accounts like Walmart and Costco, multi-million-dollar accounts. I say, we don't go to the factory and say, oh, that's cool, let's force it down Walmart's throat, they must buy this.
Yep.
We have to understand what Walmart wants. We have to understand what Costco wants, and then we work back, right? We say, this is the price point, this is the target margin, this is the target return. Let's work back and then shop and then match them in the middle, right? Because the other way he was doing it is like, it worked because at that point he went to the lawyer's office and picked up 3 keys that same day. So he was able to deliver. However, I said that's more of a reactive approach. Let's try
Yep.
a proactive approach to this business, right? So we work
Okay.
market back. So that's where I come in and I strategize with him. I'd say, hey, let's just, you do the back end, I do the front end, we meet in the middle, and then we have to ensure that we're aligned.
Okay. And um, when you were selecting the market, what market are you speaking about?
So we are primarily focusing on Cornwall, Ontario, which is Eastern Ontario.
Okay.
We strongly believe in this market because of the potential, right? So when we invest in something, we don't invest in something that is like the deal for the time being. We invest in the potential of that property and that town, right? Whether
Got it.
we have extra land to do development, or things that are coming that will to the town that will create that appreciation.
Okay. And do you believe the relationships you've built with your partner and the boots on the ground strategy that you have in Cornwall, do you think that's transferable to any other markets in the Eastern Ontario, for example?
Yeah, I think so. I think the strategy can translate to any market. That's why, I mean, the way we do it is like we start from the relationship, like I mentioned.
Yep.
My partner and I, we started with the relationship. Any deal we do starts with the relationship, the trust, right? And being vulnerable, and then, manage that relationship. So in the market that we're in, we want to focus primarily on our bread and butter, right? So we
Yep.
know that the deals work, and the more we do, the more deals we get, and the more people that we connect with, right? So we want
Yep.
to focus on one market, do it really well, like do the birds in our sleep, and then
Yep.
rinse and repeat, and then double down.
Yeah. So you make a very fine point, and I would say for me at the beginning, I was operating in multiple markets. But I definitely see the advantage of operating in one market because I believe there's more economies of scale,
Mm-hmm.
when you're focused and you're doubling down on one market. Now, you could expand once, as you mentioned, once you've sort of mastered the ins and outs of that market. But I guess going into multiple markets at the same time, trying to build relationships in multiple markets at the same time, a lot of your effort would be quite diverted. So, I definitely see I'm seeing more success from a lot of investors who are focused on one market or one region. They double down on that market, try to build scale, try to build economies of scale, try to build relationships, master that market. They are able to do comparables, like even without looking at House Sigma or Matrix.
Uh-huh.
They're able to make firm offers by just knowing the neighborhoods.
Yep.
I find that you're able to move quicker, you're able
Yep.
to move with confidence when you've spent a lot more time in one market, like you know the market in and out. And then once you sort of saturate that market, you could then start expanding out to take what you've built and lift it into a new market.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, because I do like the scalability. I do like building infrastructure on a specific market,
Yep.
and like exactly what you said. I know the numbers inside out. Like we know exactly what to go in at, because what I want to say is, like, I want to adapt a vertically integrated business model, which means that we manage the project from A to Z, and we don't use any middleman, right? So from the beginning of the deal find, we're cultivating those relationships in that market by being in the market for a long time, and we want to dominate that market so that way people know that we're always buying, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so we already, get our deals directly by cultivating that long-term relationship with a couple slumlords, you would say, slumlords, or older people that are just, a lot of the town is a lot of retired people. So
Yep.
sometimes it's a natural turnover, if you know what I mean. So that
Yep.
also
Yep.
helps. So so we do that, and then even my partner being the contractor, the GC, so we a la carte all the services and save costs that way. So the
Got
labor
it.
is
Okay.
a lot more cost effective and cheaper, right? So we're already saving here, then we're saving there, and then
Hmm.
we're property managing our own property. So that way, again, we have more control,
Yep.
and we
So
have
if,
more quality
so if,
control. Yeah.
so effectively, again, if I bring it back to the money people do framework, so you sort of have all three pillars covered, right?
Yeah.
You have the deal and the people side sort of covered by your partner who is a GC as well, and
Hmm.
also is finding deals, and then you have the money side covered. So you essentially have all three parts covered, which is what you need in a power team.
Yep. Yep, exactly. So yeah, so people are like, the money is so expensive. How are you still doing BRRRRs? Like, we're pivoting to the US, we're pivoting to Edmonton. But for me, it's like, this is my backyard. I know the inside, I know the inside of my backyard inside and out. I know everything about this market. So
Yep.
it's very safe for us. Even though you say, like, how are you even making profit during the economic downturn? Like you mentioned, it's about the deal, right? And
Yep.
then obviously find creative ways along the other aspects, people, money, deal, to ensure that you're saving costs and you're maximizing your profits by
Okay.
keeping the margin a little bit more steady. So and then even on top of that, it's like I do Airbnb management as well.
Okay.
That way, instead of paying, somewhat a company to 25% margin, right? I'm
Yep.
doing it myself, and we're splitting obviously my partner and I the cash flow, so that way the profit is within. our company. And then for the property management side, we charge ourselves a lower fee, and we have full control over the quality of tenants because we're always trading tenants, right, within our pool of units.
Yep.
And then, it starts from A to Z. So I think, that's how we're able to, always successfully do almost full BRRRRs for the most part, because we have full control over this
Yeah.
market.
Very interesting. There was one thing you mentioned, like about staying long enough in the market so that people know who you are and they bring you deals. And I think that's something I wanted to touch on because, as you know, and I mentioned to you that, like in a wholesaling business or anyone who's looking to find off market deals, you have the free methods, you have the paid methods. Well, a lot of people spend money on paid methods, right? So it could be flyers, it could be social media ads, and it's expensive to find leads. But it's interesting because when you focus on one market, you build relationships in that market, and people start to bring you deals.
Yeah.
Effectively, your acquisition costs go to zero.
Yeah.
Right? Because now they bring you deals that you didn't have to pay for. So I wanted you to walk us through, what your acquisition costs look like or what your acquisition structure looks like. Because a lot of people are buying deals from wholesalers, 10K, 20K, 30K, 40K, 50K wholesale fees. Wholesalers are paying for flyer campaigns, paying for social media ads. But you are essentially, getting BRRRR properties and you don't seem to be paying anything. So could you walk us through over the past year, like how much you spent on marketing and how many properties you were able to get with this acquisition channel, and just your thought process on how you plan to keep scaling that acquisition channel?
Yeah. So I think I mentioned the first is starting with the relationship. So let's just say building credibility and within the market. So for instance, if we commit to purchasing a property,
Yep.
we are committing to that property. And so that's why it brings me back to market back, right? So
Yep.
I have investors who sort of like are in the profile. So I know what my customers need. I know their budget. I know their timeline. I know their targeted, returns and such.
Yep.
So that's why the beauty is, like, once you know your customer, you work market back, and then you start negotiating with the sellers directly based on what
Yep.
you need, right? Because once you create that deal, you already have someone ready to go. So that's the beauty of it. That's the kind of business model that I want to adapt. So creating credibility and showing them with actions like, hey, if I'm going to commit to closing this property, I'm going to close this property. But
Yep.
also the beauty is, like, we would talk to the sellers directly and negotiate the terms. So that way there's no wholesaler in between or a realtor, because
Yep.
we know what we need, because we already have a direct access to the customers and we already know what numbers we need to hit, right?
Yep. Yep.
So that in turn creates trust, and they're open to vendor takebacks. So I'll give you an example of a person, like it's a slumlord. So he owns hundreds of properties in the area, and
Hundreds in Cornwall. Interesting.
he used to own hundreds. He sold half of them already, right? Because
Same.
I know he had inherited from his, generations of wealth, right? Just having like his family owning properties, and now it's like down to him and passed on, right? So we knew this was a huge opportunity for us. We're like, we would do everything it takes to close every property we put on a contract with him, so that way we can have first priority.
Yeah.
So it starts with like, hey, what do you have for us? Sort of like working market back. It's like, hey, let's go out for a drink. Let's go out for some coffee. I bought you your favorite alcohol. How are you doing? How's your family doing? So we kind of like date them.
Yeah.
We date our investors. We say, hey, what can I do? So because we've developed the relationship, they're more lenient. When we ask for extensions, they're like, okay, cool, yeah, no worries, because I trust you that you're going to deliver. When we
Yeah.
ask for discounts, just say, hey, listen, like the property needs more work than required. And so we also assess like how much mortgage to have in the property. We work with our realtor or our mortgage broker to say, let's assess the situation. How much mortgage does he have owing? If he has very little, then we can negotiate VTB. What is his bottom line? What's his lifestyle like? How distressed is his property, right?
Yeah.
How desperate is he? Like, which partner does he have with it? Is he really, really desperate to sell right now?
Yeah.
So we look for problems, right? So we'll look for, like, let's just say there's some open orders from the city. They're slumlords. They don't want to take care of the property. So we say, you know what? We'll take these problems off your hands. There's a non-paying tenant. No problem. We can solve that. We'll take it off your hands, but we'll need this amount of discount. So we try to understand the holistic situation from A to Z, and then
Yeah.
we go in, we negotiate. So we also assess, like, hey, I can't get a mortgage. Your house is way too distressed. We need X amount of discount. I can't get a mortgage. You know you need to V2B us because we can't finish this project. This tenant is delinquent. We'll take it off your
I,
hands. So
I see.
we always, it's almost like a mental game, like a strategy. It's like, okay, so where can we hit them? Like, how can we hit them? Are they desperate? So that's kind of like how we do it.
Yeah.
It's like understanding who they are. It's almost like psychological assessment.
So remind me not to send out any flyer campaigns in Cornwall, because I feel like if we send out flyer campaigns in Cornwall, like the sellers would be like, okay, I'll just call Trang.
No. But yeah, no, that's kind of how we approach it. A holistic point of view. It's not just face value. So let's just say we bought a property from someone, and then we found out that the other person who owned the property, he passed away. It was one of the things. And we're like, it's just like, we'll do everything. We'll drive by and we're like, we just finished our closing on our sixplex, and beside it, there is land. So we called up our contact and say, who owns that land? So we found out that the man who owned it passed away years ago. We got his name. We tried to contact him on Facebook, and like, he passed away. So I'm like, okay, we need to buy that land. Let's get in contact with his family.
I was a bit worried that you said he passed away a few years ago, and then you got his number and you tried to contact him on Facebook. I'm like, did he respond?
No, yeah. So
I was going to ask, did he respond?
no, that's yeah. So like things like that. Would you like one of my first BRRRR, we got the deal from the dumpster guy. He's going around. Yeah, so he's going around collecting dumpster. So the dumping guy, when he closes the properties, it's either it's a landlord, investor, or someone passed away, or they got to move. So we tell him, we say, hey, listen, like, get us deals. And the other deals we got was from our drunken handyman, who we fired 3 times. We're like,
so this is gold, because honestly, like, I had a call with a buddy of mine last week before the holidays. He closed the deal, significant equity, and the deal came through an alternative channel, very similar to what you're saying. So the dumpster guy, his client base is a perfect avatar for a motivated seller. The drunken handyman, the people he does jobs for, are perfect avatars for a motivated seller. This partner that I told you about, he closed the deal. He owns a construction company, and someone wanted to do a renovation, and he bought the person's house as is. Wow. Right? So, a lot of these alternative channels, like I've spoken with people who have gotten deals from pest control companies, right? So a lot of these deals, I'm finding they're coming from alternative channels that are not the traditional channels. So for example, we would send out flyers to a house saying, we want to buy your house. Well, think about it. The seller who receives that flyer, it's very possible that they want to take certain steps before they sell the house. So it's possible maybe their house is infested with pests. They get a flyer that will buy your house as is, but they're like, you know what? I don't want to sell my house like this. Let me first, take care of the pest issue. Then they call a pest control company. Now, if that pest control guy comes in, or that pest control lady comes in, and they are an investor, now they get in front of the seller before the real estate investor gets in front of the seller. So it's like, if you are able to find relationships, partnerships with these traits, you could unlock significant value. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to connect with you, because being able to get deals from your dumpster guy, from your handyman, from your contractor, basically leveraging your power team relationships to get into these deals at zero acquisition cost is just fantastic.
Yeah, like for instance, another, we will look on market as well, but we will go directly to the seller
Yeah.
because, like you said, we have a check mark. Okay, how much mortgage does he owe? Let's go for coffee. You know, almost like so a lot of them are older too, right? So a lot of them are
Yeah.
older, like 50s and 60s. They're like, okay, slowly they're kind of trying to offload their portfolio, right?
Yeah.
So we want to be the first in line, right? So because we have that face to face, I just send my partner out to work his charm, right?
Okay.
It's all about that relationship and work his charm. Like, go buy him dinner, go you do. So I'm like, I send him out. He's just like, the approach I take is like, these people have been in the game for so long,
Yeah.
and they don't really have recognition. They're grinding day in day out. They've been doing this for 50, like a long time, right? They have
Yeah.
so many
Yeah.
properties, and for you to say, you know what, I admire what you do. I really do. I'm inspired by you. You are really
Oh,
me.
I see. So it's like you're building them up, appreciating
Yeah,
them for years
appreciate.
of not being appreciated.
Yeah, exactly. So, understanding what they need and what drives them. Like, I wanna be thoughtful. I want to be considerate. I love what you're doing. I'm inspired by you. You've accomplished so much. I want to congratulate you because I know that in our game it's not easy. So once they hear that, they're like, oh, they're taken aback because everyone's coming at them for deals and a very cold approach. For
Yeah.
deals, give me a discount, give me da da da. No, you just start with the relationship. Start with who they are, understand who they are. So that was my approach, and I saw that in my partner. So we're aligned on that. So we discussed how to approach it in that sense.
Got
And
it. Hmm.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like take a softer human approach. That's all it takes. Because these men, they've dealt with so many contractors, they've dealt with so many people trying to like throw them over and pull the rug under them. So how do we come at them with a more soft approach?
Different approach. Yeah.
Like EQ. I think I'm coming from a female. I think this is kind of like my approach to relationships because I'm very like I like to work on the EQ, right? So I think it works because these men are like macho baby boomers. They're like, oh yeah, like all about like business. But I'm like, okay, well, let's just add a human element to it.
I see. So, if we want to summarize this, I'm not saying like this can be summarized, but what I hear you say is you've used a lot of emotional intelligence and brought that into, the world of real estate, and from a business standpoint, like speaking to people, understanding their pain points, knowing what drives them, knowing exactly what gets them to feel like they want to sell to you. Those are the things that you are doing essentially, and they feel connected to you. They feel like they can sell to you. They feel like I've worked for 20, 30, 40 years, and she understands me. She gets me.
Hmm. Yeah. And also, having proof of concept, saying I closed this deal, so give me more. And
Yeah,
also not biting off more than we can chew, right?
true,
Just be
true.
more methodical and say, you know what, like, so yeah, it's all about like to me it's not just making decisions in silo, just looking at the big picture. Like even when
Okay.
you have soft people skills, you can actually also influence your tenants and say, you know what, this place you're living in has no roof, has no like it's just distress and it's not a good lifestyle for you. We can bridge you to a place that's a little bit more expensive, but at least you'll have a better living lifestyle. Like we kind of coach some of the tenants to have a better lifestyle. So we're not just in there to like, do the dirty. We're there to help them. Just say, how can we create a win-win situation? How can I help you out and you can help me out in return? Because
Mm,
obviously where you're living is like it's been neglected for decades. We want to make
okay.
the space better for you. So for me,
Yeah.
this is like it's not just about making a profit, going in and burning properties. It's like we're creating jobs. We're giving these drunken handymen like fire them, giving them new opportunities. We're buying supplies from Home Depot, giving those people a job. We're just creating a more homely, livable space for people who have been living under such inhumane conditions. So for me,
Mm,
it's just like, real estate is like, it's all encompassing. It's just above and beyond making profit. It's about like, how can I give back to the community? Like, how can I help that person and his kids not live in a place where there's no heat, which these slumlords are comfortable with. We don't do that. We don't live like that. You know, we don't do it like that way.
So if we take a step back, so a lot of these things that you've done, has led to you guys being able to find these properties. You mentioned that you had done about 5 BRRRRs. You have about 12 units now that you guys are currently working on. So that's fantastic in a market where a lot of people were pulling back. So going into 2024, what are your thoughts on what you and your partner plan to do in Cornwall? And if you have any, I would say, feedback or any advice for any new investors who are looking to start in 2024, what would you say to them?
The reason why I was able to propel in such a short time is because I started with a very hungry mindset and I was ready to take action, right? So sometimes you may not know the full picture. You may not know 100% of what you're doing is right or wrong. But in that moment, if you've decided to take a little bit of action every day and moving the needle forward,
Yeah.
and then following it through with like actionable actions, not just like reading another book or watching another YouTube or listen to another podcast, actually doing it. Because the only way you really learn is by doing it, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like what I did, is because I was done learning. I mean, like I was done like listening and reading. I was ready to like go, right?
Yep.
And what's the worst that could happen? Okay, yeah, you pulled up less money, but your money is parked in a tangible asset.
Yeah, true.
You know, in the long run, it's like the real estate, yes, it's risky, but if you take calculated risk and just do it, I would say just do it. Like literally just, take action. And I would say partnership is actually really important, because some people think they don't want to share profit, right? They're like,
Yep.
okay, well, why can't I do it myself? But if I had done this by myself and not be intelligent enough to leverage other people's skill set to complement my own, I wouldn't have grown in the amount that I have grown. I would just still be where I am and be stuck in decision paralysis. But having a partner is sort of like your accountability. It's sort of like your engine to keep going. Like if one partner is down, the other one will pull the other one up. It's almost like accountability. And then having goals and just doing it together. Because if you're on your own, that it's a mind game. You're going to lose motivation and you want to give up because it's too stressful.
Okay.
Whatever you're stressed, whatever you don't want to do, which I know I'm not my strength. I let him do it and I do what he's not good at. So that way we have the full engine running.
Yeah.
There's oil, there's gas, it's tuned up, like it's good to go. It's like, boom, let's go.
Okay, so from what I hear, like hunger, obviously, that drives you to even take action.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that was a key part, and obviously taking the action, leveraging people's relationships or leveraging people's skill sets, to move forward. Okay, perfect. This has been super, super, super interesting, Trang.
It was so fun.
And this is edging us towards the end of the show. But before we let you go, there's usually a question that we ask everyone, which is, in your real estate journey, what would you say has been your greatest L? It could be a lesson, it could be a learning, it could be a loss that you've experienced. What has been that one thing that you feel when you look back, it's like, this is my greatest L since I started?
I would say the one time where we turned our large single family house into a housing rental for higher cash flow.
Okay.
It was more of a band-aid. However, I think in hindsight, it was a horrible idea because, because I guess the tenants, because it was a revolving door, as much as we were like, oh my God, look at the cash flow, it's amazing. But there was no protection. So what happened was like the tenants brought in bed bugs. And then we sent out the exterminator 8 times. And then they talking to each other and say, we're not paying rent. So that was, and then we try to refinance, and then the bank's like, oh, this is a rooming house. We don't finance rooming house.
Wow. Okay.
So it was one of those things,
Double whammy or triple whammy,
triple
actually.
whammy. And then we tried to sell it, and then because we didn't fix it or anything, so it's kind of like, it was kind of like a triple whammy of things that there was a huge lesson learned that, like, A, don't convert it to rooming house just because you want more cash flow. You should find the right deal in the first place. B, it's like kind of like a band-aid, right?
Yep.
So that this is a result of like just fixing it as a band-aid and not thinking of the project going in with a holistic strategy. So because you're just fixing every little thing with a band-aid, it ended up being more band-aid on top of more band-aid. And then it was just like a hot mess. So
Yeah.
so finally the tenants left, thank goodness, after 6 months of not paying. So now it's just kind of like,
6 months.
So two of them were in cahoots with each other, because it was like a rooming house. There's 5 bedrooms. Cash flow was amazing, but in hindsight, it's like,
Cash flow problems.
yeah,
Cash flow plus problems.
and revolving door with tenants. It was just a horrible idea. So lesson learned. We won't do that again. If we do, then it has to make sense.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you for sharing that story. What I'm going to take from this, one thing I'm going to take from this, amongst all the things that I've taken, is cash flow problems. I'm going to remember cash flow problems, when I remember this story. Okay.
Yeah.
So before we let you go, you mentioned that you invest in Cornwall. There's quite a number of investors who will be looking to connect with you. If they want to do so, how do they connect with you?
Yeah, I think they can just reach me on Instagram, her as an EMPO. PO.HER.
Don't worry, it's going to be in the show notes.
Okay, so you can reach me on social and Instagram, and then we can connect there. I think there's a calendar there. We can connect and talk if they're interested in BRRRRs, in Ontario, or short-term rentals, because I manage that. I'm a super host as well, so that's kind of fun.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very, very much, Trang. That's it for today's episode, folks. Thank you very, very much for listening to the Deals and Estate Wholesaling podcast. If you enjoyed this show, please remember to rate and review us on Apple, Google, and Spotify. And be sure to hit that subscribe and notification button so that you know when Trang episodes drop and also when the next episode drops. So until then, remember, a deal a day keeps scarcity at bay.